Hi everyone, welcome to the self-knowledge lectures to the phase B. Today, check this. Okay, today we are going to see the last lecture of this self-knowledge course, of the phase B of the self-knowledge course. And in this lecture, we are going to study this very interesting topic, how to differentiate a white magic temple from a black magic one. Remember that this self-knowledge course consists of 75 lectures, 50 lectures on its phase A, and 25 on its phase B. And today, we are going to see the lecture number 25 of the phase B. If you have any question, as always, remember that you can leave your questions down there in the comment box, and I will be gladly solving any question that you have. Okay. So, why is this lecture so important? Why? So that we don't let ourselves be deceived on our path, since we can meet people who can be called enlightened masters, transcendent beings, whom we should follow. We could even currently be following people, institution, certain masters, or an author, without really knowing if their path and objective is black or white. So, in this lecture, we are going to see how to differentiate them internally. Because here in the physical world, people can show themselves as they want to. People can build temples and put their symbolisms to make us believe that we are in a temple of the White Lodge, but internally is where we can see the reality. Okay, and if we learn about this topic that we have today, if we learn to distinguish the temples, we can go to the astral plane, to the mental plane, and we can investigate these people, these temples, and get to know if we are on a temple of white magic or of black magic. When we are there internally, and we are making this kind of investigations that is totally possible for us to do. If we want to investigate someone, some temple, some cult, some group, spiritual group or religion or whatever, we can actually unfold ourselves to the astral plane, and we can ask our inner being to show us, to take us to that place where we can go there, and we can, with the intuition, get to discern if we are in a white lodge temple or place, or on a black lodge one. So, among the objectives of today's lecture, we find that we are going to know what a temple is, to know what that there are temples of white magic, and that there are temples of black magic, and that we must learn to differentiate them. Sorry, let me just make sure that everything is okay here. Just a second. And we are going to learn how to differentiate them, know each of the parts of the temple and its true meaning. We are going to also know today what a ritual is, and we are going to know how many kinds of rituals there are and what are they. Yeah, so let's start this topic talking a little about the power of the sexual energy, since we will see that it is the sexual energy and the use that is given to it, to our own sexual energy, where the power of both black magicians and white magicians resides there. Sexual force in the hands of white magicians and of black magicians is a terrible weapon. Using this energy wisely, restraining the sexual impulse, and making this energy ascend through our spine, we will fill ourselves with power. We will revitalize ourselves. We will positively develop our chakras. We are going to start unblocking those faculties of the consciousness, those forces, those virtues and powers that are latent in each one of us. And we are going to develop the internal bodies, and we are going to create the Christ in us. On the other hand, with the fatal spill of the seminal fluid, millions of solar atoms are lost, and the movement of sexual contraction that follows the spilling of the semen, actually it is like the contraction when you are spilling and you are absorbing at that moment. And there you are collecting, you are spilling solar atoms, and you are collecting from the atomic furnace of the microcosm millions of satanic atoms that replace the lost solar atoms. And this is the way in which we form the devil in us, and we develop all the evil powers of the Khanda buffer organ. Thus, with the sexual energy, we can form the Christ or the devil within us, depending on the use that we make of our sexual energy. Having this clear, let's see what is a temple. We have perhaps ever seen that phrase that says that our body is a temple for the Holy Spirit. And that is because, yes, the word temple is actually related to a physical body. And there, or the physical body is the laboratory where the third logos or the Holy Spirit officiates. And from this, we can deduce that there are two types of temples, that of the male and that of the female. So we can affirm that in each of those temples, two different creations will be made, since each one is like an individual laboratory. And you can find many temples in the physical world, and well, more the old temples, and you can see that they have these shapes. We find chapels, and they have this shape that you can see there with this point that is actually representing the male temple. There you find the shape of the phallus or the penis, and you can find the cathedrals, for example, that are representing the physical body of the woman, and for that reason they have this shape. And it's because, yes, what a temple is trying to represent is the real temple that are each one of the physical body. So each time that a couple unites sexually in their individual temple, a magic ritual is being officiated. The Holy Spirit or the third logos will always create during this ritual. That means that every time that we go to sex, we are creating. When we go to sex to reproduce, the sexual creative energy of the man and the woman meet in the uterus, and there the creation begins. But when we go to sex to create, but now the children of light, which are our internal bodies, the ritual of sex or of sexual magic is there called supersex, which is the sexual union of the phallus and the uterus, but without spilling the sexual creative energy. In this type of ritual, each of the participants makes their own creation based on that sexual union. And in this, this is what can be called a white magic ritual, in which the energy will be directed always inwards and upwards. And those that are there attending this ritual will be like the different sparks of consciousness that were liberated with the work of the psychological death that we made during the day. And they are there, ready to ascend towards the heavens. Remember that heavens are the higher centers or the higher dimensions in ourselves. We find them there. And well, when we attend the sexual union or act with the purpose of having fun, with no other purpose than pleasure, without any transcendental objective, as everyone does, this union also makes its own creation. And this creation are the children of darkness, which are the selves, the demons, or the psychological defects that we all have and that were created because of the bad use of the sexual energy, because of the fornication, and that we continue reproducing every time that we go to sex and we feel the sexual energy. And this type of sexual act is known as infrasex, since it like refers to animal sex with fornication, and there is no purity in this sexual practice. And when the sexual practice is, or the sexual magic is practiced, but already with the purpose of awakening for evil, then the sexual creative energy is poured out in the feminine yoni, that is the vagina, and there is contaminated and then intentionally with some black rituals, this energy is reabsorbed and directed towards the atomic infernos of the person. And with this practice, the person will gradually be awakening the demonic powers of a black magician, which will later allow him to achieve his rank as an anagarika, which are like the ranks of the black magicians. And this kind of people already have a knowledge of the power of sexual energy, and they use it to awaken these sinister powers. And this is what is known as a black magic ritual. So we can see that the word magic is there related to sexual magic, to sex. And in white magic, the Kundalini, that Kundalini serpent that ascends victoriously towards our spine, develops, which is that igneous serpent that is going to give us all of the magical powers of our consciousness, and that is ascending all the time, inwards and upwards. In a white magic, the person never ever fornicates. That is, never ever go to sex to feel the pleasure of the orgasm and ejaculation, thus wasting their valuable sexual energy. While the black sexual magic, or in the black sexual magic, this Kanda buffer organ develops, and that is the tempting serpent of Eden, and this tail that you find that all demons have, and this is the one that is going to develop in the person the inverted magical powers. That this by analogy of opposites. And in black magic is always fornication. So it is important to understand that every person who unites sexually with a partner to raise their energy is to make his energy ascend, or her energy ascend, is on the way of becoming a white magician. While everyone who unites sexually to expel their energy from the body is on the way to become a black magician. Even those who practice great tantrism and who don't have the knowledge of the value and the power of energy, sooner or later become black magicians, because their seminal envelope blackens with each fornication until there comes an existence or a life where they end up at some point awakening in evil. So a person actually here in the physical world can appear to us very pure, or appear to, or they can pretend to have a high level of spiritual enlightenment. But if that person is fornicating in his, or if it is a celibate, in his inner temple, he is officiating black magic rituals. Okay, And when we go to the astral plane and we do this kind of investigations and we ask our inner being to allow us to see, for example, the temple of this or that person from whom we are, for example, receiving an information, a teaching, or a person that we are following, or even internally. So I was saying, visiting the places where we, for example, congregate to receive some spiritual instruction. We can, if we know beforehand the symbolisms that differentiate a black temple from a white one, knowing what kind of instruction or knowledge we are receiving, we can get to differentiate them. But there are also some characteristics that even in the physical plane can lead us like to start elucidating if we are dealing with a white magician or with a black magician. Although it is very good to always confirm internally, guided by our intuition and using the Jupiter's conjuration that we learned in the lecture 7 of phase A, since black magicians often disguise their temples here in the physical plane, seeking to deceive the naive. But externally, in this physical plane, we can, yes, start defining them as a white magician or a white magician temple. You can see that, or you are going to find that they are going to teach you about the wise use of the sexual energy, about the supersexuality, and in a white magic temple, supersex is practiced always. So the Kundalini is being developed between a man and a woman, remember, in fidelity, chastity, and love. So if you find a master, supposed master, but that person has like 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 12 wives, then you can know that that is not a white magician, okay? Because for a super sex to be a superior sexual practice, you need to have fidelity. Fidelity, which means you're going to practice only with one stable partner of the opposite sex. You need chastity, which is non-fornication, never ever spilling your sexual energy during the sexual practice and outside the sexual practice. And love, that is love, respect to your couple, and that spiritual longing that make you go to a sexual practice, but to search for that spiritual enlightenment, not to feel the pleasure, the animal enjoyment, okay? And on the other hand, in a black magic temple, infrasex is always practiced, and the sinister powers of the Khanda buffer organ are consciously being developed, causing that serpent to awaken, descending dark towards the atomic hell of men. And you can see that, for example, in the astral plane. You can see the tail of the person, and you can see your own tail. And if you are already working on yourself, on eliminating your defects, on making your sexual energy ascend and never ever reach fornication, that is making your Kundalini ascend, then that tail is going to shorten and shorten until you end up eliminating totally that satanic tail. And in the temples of the White Lodge, they always teach the 3 factors for the consciousness revolution. So the awakening of consciousness, the creation of the existential bodies of the being, and the self-realization of the being are always sought and taught. And students who want to try to do their own self-realization work are invited there. While in the temples of the Black Lodge, by analogy of opposites, infrasex is practiced. Its objective is to awaken those inverted powers without ever ceasing to feel the pleasure of the orgasm or that the fornication produces. And the self-realization of the being is not wanted at all, nor the creation of the internal bodies. They just pursue the powers that will allow them to subdue others, that is. And the black magicians actually win and win levels in the ranks of Anagarika when they enslave their fellow men. For that reason, they are all the time giving teachings that confuse. They are trying to ridicule the teachings of suprasex, and generally they seek to make the students to dedicate themselves only to awakening the different powers and faculties, but without awakening their consciousness. So they are giving these powers and faculties to their own ego, and always like in an easy way, just mentalizing or doing some kind of ritual or concentrating on something or like that, without ever working on themselves. And that way, the ego is the one that takes those powers and those faculties. And for this reason, they are all the time trying to disguise their temples, seeking, as I was saying, to deceive the naive. That is why we need to open our eyes and to always investigate the person from whom we are like receiving teachings, informations, and we can do so. All of us can do that kind of investigations. In all the temples of the Black Lodge, the Christ is terrible hated. Even though they can say they love Christ and they worship Christ, or they have a Christ there in the wall, actually they hate suprasex and they hate love. And that way they will never make the Christ to be born in them. In that way we can actually say that they hate the Christ. And if we understand all this, we will see why, in order to achieve their objectives, they are all the time trying to play pretend. We need to study all of this. But actually, something that we need to know is that the only true way to differentiate a black magic temple from a white magic one is with intuition. There, the importance of developing intuition. Remember that I think in lecture number 2020 here on the Faceway, we were explaining how to develop that very important faculty, which is intuition, so that we can learn to differentiate these kind of things. But it is very important that we analyze certain symbolisms that allow us to identify when in the internal worlds we find ourselves before a temple of white magic or before a temple of black magic, okay? And the symbols that we are going to find, for example, in the temples of a white lodge, of our authentic white lodge temple, in the internal worlds, remember, because here in the physical world you can find all those symbolisms, but that doesn't mean that actually they are really teaching something real, something pure. Because here you can just put those symbolism. That only means that at some point they have the information. But if you really want to make sure, you need to make a conscious astral investigation. Go internally to that temple. And if it is a white lodge temple, you are going to find at the entrance of the temple two columns, a white one and a black one. And they are Jachin and Boaz. Those are the two guardians of the temple. And we can also find the entering like a folding screen that protects like the interior of the temple from the view from the outside. And this represents like the woman's imen, and I think that is the way to pronounce that. And we usually find this screen in the temples of feminine masters if we are investigating a woman. And once inside the temple, we will see that there are three channels through which you can walk. And the central channel actually represents the Nadi Chitra, which is like the main conduit of the spine. And the two later channels represent Suida and Pingala, which are those serpents that cross around the spine. And this also represents these three channels: the concentration, the imagination, and the will. like respectively. And we are also going to find in a White Lodge temple the holy water fonts on both sides of the central channel, and they represent the sexual glands of that person, the gonads or the ovaries in the case of that is a woman. And the quality of the water that we find there in these fonts it are like an indication of the state of the energy, of how pure is the energy of that person. And we can even see 7 lamps there found in the central channel. And these are the 7 churches of the apocalypse. Remember that we talked about that in the lecture 7 of the phase B. And we will also find, like in the 5th column, a pulpit, which symbolizes the body of the will. That person already developed that body and developed the power of the word. That represents also the Church of Sardis, and that's for the sacrifice for humanity. And the pulpit is to deliver the wisdom. That means that the person already achieved internally the level of the priesthood. And officiating in that temple, in a White Lodge temple, will always be a priest who represents the masculine force, the holy affirmation, the active principle, and the penetration, and that represents Osiris. What else? Well, and the penis, the masculine phallus, that is the representation. And together with a priestess, who represents the feminine force, the holy deny, the passive principle of reception and reabsorption, and who represents also to Isis, the female Johnny, or the vagina. And in the temple of the White Lodge, we are also going to find a cauldron with 108 candles. It shows us in each one of the 108 existence of the person actually is living. And if you, for example, are in your own temple internally, because yes, we can also visit our own temples internally, and you find your cauldron, there you can see in which of those 108 lives you currently are. For example, if you find that there are lit, I don't know, 107, and only one is like unlit, that means that you are currently living in your 107 existence, and you in this cycle you have one life left, which is the one that is unlit. Okay, that is what is the name for that? That is off, let's say. And to access the altar, we find 3 steps indicating the 3 descent to sex to mate to different creations. Also, these 3 steps represent the 3 mountains that the initiate must climb on this internal work, and also symbolizes the 3 primary forces. Also, there we are going to find the dome that symbolizes the head, and below the dome we find the altar. In that part of the temple, if it is a White Lodge temple, should be towards the east. And well, as I was saying, below the dome you are going to find a stone altar in a perfect cubic shape, which represents the cubic stone of Yesod. That also represents the bed where they practice the sexual act, the man and the woman, and where the cubic stone is perfected, because the stone represents the sex. And on the altar, we find most of the time a white tablecloth that in red letters shows PTR. A P is for pater or Peter. T is for Tau, the T-shaped cross, and the R is for Ra, the fire element. And there, over the altar, we always are going to find a chalice that represents the mind and its vehicle, which is the brain, where the wine that represents the transmuted energy the creative sexual energy of the Holy Spirit is there carried. And this chalice also represents a female sexual organ. And on the altar, we also find the bread, which represents the body of Christ, which is the wisdom. And other elements that we can find in the altar are, for example, a glass of water that is representing the Seminis, which is the creative sexual energy for the sexual transmutation. And there you're going to see the pureness of the energy of that master, for example. We find wine, that is the already transmuted energy. We find Bible, we find books that represents the wisdom of that master. We are going to find their swords that represents the willpower, the will of that master. We can find also a staff, or a cane with 7 knots, and that is a symbol of the spinal cord. And tied to the top of the cane, we find three tassels. Then the three, they are representing that the 3 factors. The 3 factors that this master used to raise his cane, that is the sexual energy through his spine. We find there a scythe, that is the element of the angels of death, and this symbolizes that the law may be fulfilled. That is the symbol. And we can find there over that altar a candlestick with 3 candles, representing the 3 forces, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Also, we can find a candlestick with 7 candles, and they represent the 7 bodies, or the 7 serpents of fire that are lit. If they are lit, the 7 candles that there, that is a person that already has his 7 bodies already, or his 7 serpents already raised, and the 7 bodies already created. We can also find a wooden cross that represents the sexual union of the man and the woman. Remember the previous lecture of the Phase V, where we were talking about the meaning of the cross. But we can also find a crucifix that is representing the cross of death, the initiate willing to die and to resurrect. We can also find there a pentalpha, but standing pentalpha with head up and feet on the ground. That is representing the authentic man, the universe in itself. We can find their flowers that represents the virtues of the soul that are acquired through the struggle for perfection. We can find a lion, which is the symbol of divine law. We can find a rooster, also what is the name of that? Rooster there in the wall with its frame, and with the inscription "He is He." That is very common, or LSL in Spanish, and that is representing I am the one who awakens the day, the consciousness, and that rooster is representing the Lucifer. And we can also find in the altar an eagle feather, which is the symbol of the air element, or the power that master have already over his mind. Now the power over the air. We can also find there, let me see, some vestments that represents the vestments of the soul. These vestments can be white or can be light blue, and they are representing the existential bodies of the being. We need to find there fire lit that represents the conscious faith. We are also going to find there a mirror that represents a self-observation, to remember that every flaw that we see in others is a reflection of ourselves. That is the law with which that master worked to gain all the consciousness that he had. We can find there a clock, which is a symbol of time, or the symbol of the vital body, and it's showing us the duration of the existence. We can find a flag, that is a symbol of the ideal that we pursue, which is the self-realization. And we can find their incense burning, which is representing the harmony of the mental plane for the sexual practice, or the pure thoughts that rise to the higher spheres. And another thing is that we must know that every temple of the White Lodge must be built on an underground stream of water, because this temple, a White Lodge temple, is always working with water, with creative sexual energy. And that every white magic temple must have its dome in the east and its entrance in the west. And this is indicating the direction of the energy in the transmutation, inwards and upwards. And well, let me see what else. That all the white magicians carry the sword on the right side. So when eternally you want to know if someone is a white magician or a black magician, look at what side is he holding the sword in. Okay. And if when doing our internal investigations we see these symbols, or when asking to our inner being that he show us about someone, and he show us any of these symbols, then we already know their meaning, right? Now, in the temples of the Black Lodge, we find the opposite. We find, for example, there the inverted pentalpha with the head down and the feet up, and that is representing the fall of the tower, the fornication. It's also, as you can see, represents the head of the devil. And we are going to find there 4 fires, showing that that they actually are working with the power of the 4 lower centers, because that is what the black magician does. And inverted cross. We are also going to find there because they are practicing sex but with fornication. And we can also find that the ritual is being carried out by a priest with an altar boy, and that is indicating a homosexual or infrasexual practice. You must bear that in mind. Remember that in a white magic temple, you're going to find a priest with the priestess, because there, what a temple is representing is a physical body, and the rituals there are the sexual practice. Okay. And in the temple of the black magician, as you can see here, there is always fornication. A black magician advises celibacy. They practice religious homosexuality. They collect the type. Okay, and there you are never going to hear about practicing the psychological death. Never. They say that they are the ones who forgive sins. They give satanic masses, and in the temples of black magic, Yahweh is worshipped. And in the temples of black magic, the Christ is not wanted at all. Neither the Divine Mother, because the sexual energy is spilled. And the black magicians charge, or they always have their sword on the left side. That way you can know. And all this symbolism are given to us so that we don't let ourselves be deceived, and that we can clearly know where we are internally, and from what places we are going, and from what from whom we are going to receive instruction, spiritual instruction. And well, always remember that the physical body is a temple in us. You can see here how temples are in reality a representation of the internal constitution of the microcosm, which are each one of us. Because yes, each one of us is a temple internally, and the synthesis of white sexual magic is contained in an authentic temple of the White Lodge. That is what we must be working to become, right? And well, people, this has been the lecture 25 of the Phase B, which is the last lecture of the self-knowledge course. I really hope that all this information has been useful to any of you who hear to this information, and that you have a great success in your inner work. And remember that I always remain at your disposal here in the page or in the channel in case you're watching this on any other platform, not Facebook, like YouTube, for example, for any question or anything that I can help you with, okay? So I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this work and to give you all this information. And well, let me check if we have here any question to solve before ending today's lecture. Oh yes, here we have Natalia, and she's asking us. Hi Natalia, how are you? How are the walls of a temple, black or white? Well, it depends. Actually, black, if you are in a white large temple, they are not going to be black. But actually, they are not always going to be white because, for example, if it is an initiate who is working on his second initiation, there you, for example, can find that temple orange because that is the color for the vital body. Or if he's working on his mental initiation, for example, you can find the temple green. So it is not always going to be white. It can be even silver. It can be even golden. But if it is from a white lodge, if it is a white lodge temple, it is not going to be black. Okay. Natalie is saying Yahweh is in all the black temples. Know that he is there, but he is worshipped there because that is like the highest, like the highest entity in relation to religions, to guiding all of that, black religions, spirituality, but in its inverted way. And Natalia is asking, and where are the 7 churches? Well, the 7 churches are represented in the temple in the 7 lamps that you find in the channel. There you can find the 7 churches. But actually, it is possible that you can see each one of the churches. For example, that you are investigating yourself. Let's say that you are already in the second mountain. Let's say. And you have already opened 2 churches, so you can enter to each one of those churches like a temple, each one, okay? Or you can, if you see a master, I don't know who, Jesus Christ, for example, the master, and you can, for example, have the opportunity or the consciousness to go and visit his 7 temples of his 7 churches. That would be amazing, right? And another question is, where is the Dharma in the temple? Where? It can be, for example, there in the altar, like represented with, I don't know, money or coins, for example, or it can be whatever. Actually, I cannot tell you, well, there is like this place for the Dharma. That is something, sorry, that with intuition you are going to know, because it's, as I was saying, the most important faculty that we need to develop is intuition, because it's going to guide us through the process, through every investigation. It's going to let us know, just by entering into a place, you are going to start feeling if that is a white place or a black place, where is this, I need to find this here, and there the intuition is going to guide us. That actually I cannot tell you exactly where you're going to find the Dharma, but it can be on the altar, as, I don't know, coins or money. Natalia is asking also, so Yahweh is the boss of demons, not of all demons, but it is like a high entity in relation to religions, spirituality, because it's, for example, you see this entity, the one of the alcohol and the drugs, what is the name? Algol. Okay, he is a perverse demon, but he is in relation to alcohol, drugs, etc. Right? And is this guy, Yahweh, is a great entity, but in relation to religions, etc. You know that he made himself to be there in the Bible. That means he made people to take out the name of Jehovah. I don't know how to pronounce that in English. And to put his name there. And people are now there in churches worshiping Yahweh instead of Jehovah, that I don't remember how to pronounce in English. And Natalia is asking us, so how is the temple of a fallen throne? Maybe with 2 or 3 raised, where we can see the races. Well, I asked that question before. Actually, what I have seen about that is that he destroyed like the temple. It's a big temple. The greatest the greatest amount of races, the greatest temple. But it's now, you can see now that it's totally like destroyed. That is what I have seen. And when he starts working again on himself to raise himself again, he is going to start building that temple again, and it's going to be like a more gorgeous temple than before, right? It's going to be like bigger. It's going to have more I don't know, more precious elements. And like I think like in the beauty and in how big the temple is where you can see the amount of races that that master has. Well, that is what I know. Okay. And well, thank you very much, Natalia, for being here and for your questions. And thank you very much to all of you. And well, see you the next time. Ciao, ciao.